Greetings, console commanders, and welcome back to Elite Dangerous. I'm Commander Cylon, and today I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to approach space stations, outposts, and planetary stations. So there are many different types of space stations and places where you can land and dock your ship. But I'm really going to be touching base on the three major ones that are space stations, outposts, and planetary stations. There are other ones, like basically asteroids stations. Those are basically the same as regular space stations and starports. They have an interior docking pads as opposed to the outposts, which have exterior docking pads. There are also mega ships, but those are typically similar to outposts, as in the docking pads are on the outside of the structure. So approaching them really doesn't have a whole lot of importance. But space stations and asteroid stations, they have a little bit more importance on which direction that you approach the station so you can get into the entrance as quickly as possible. The third are planetary stations, and those take a very specific or a very special type of approach and are limited to those people who have the Horizons DLC. So we're going to make a quick jump here to Aaron, because this system has all three of the major types of stations. We have arrived here in system. Let's take a look at the system map. So these are the different type of space stations. We have the starports. These are the very large stations. They could be kind of like a big ball, or they could be really, really long. Either or, their docking pads are on the interior of the structure. And these are the largest ones. These ones have the most parking spaces. These two right here are outposts. They have exterior docking, and they have very limited parking, usually about 1 to 2, upwards about maybe 4, depending on, and these are limited to small and medium-sized ships only. If you have a large ship like an Anaconda, a Clipper, a Cutter, etc., these will not be able to dock at outposts. And the third are planetary stations. These ones are on the surface of planets. And they kind of look like little towns, small cities. Some of them can be extremely large. Some of them can be really, really small. And they have limited parking spaces as well. Large ships can dock on planetary stations. So we're going to approach the easiest one we can here, and that is an outpost. Go ahead and select it. It's only 296 light seconds away, so it's really close. And I'm going to show you why there's no real reason for approaching it at any sort of specific direction or angle. The only thing that would come up as an issue is if it ends up being behind the planet that it orbits. If it is, you guys have to go around the planet. Now I kind of approach it a little bit from below the planet and its orbital line, and that's so I have a clear shot at the station without the planet getting in the way. And as you can see here at the bottom right of my radar, my throttle is at the bottom part of the blue. For stations that are roughly about 500 light seconds or less from where you're at, I typically keep it at the bottom of the blue. If they're a bit further than that, or if I have cargo and I am being hunted by pirates, I will hit it full throttle until I get to about 10 seconds on the arrival timer, which is right there below the distance and the name. Then I throttle down to the bottom of the blue. As you can see, the orbital line for the station is really, really close to the planet. And those white circles that are coming off the planet, that's the gravity well. That's where the planet's gravity will start to influence your speed. You can use that to your advantage and actually use a planet's gravity to slow your ship down if you're approaching a little bit too fast. You just have to get in real close. The arrival distance is 1 megameter and 1 meter per second, or 1 kilometer per, what is that? 1,000 kilometers per second, which is typical when you're really close to a planet. So here we are, coming in. Speed's good, distance is good. We can now disengage. And here we are at the outpost. Let's not deploy our weapon. Go ahead, now that we're within 7.5 kilometers, we can request docking. Over here you can see the diagram of the station. And the compass right there kind of gives you an idea of where your parking spot is, but sometimes it can be on the other side of the outpost. Just fly around it and look for it there. That can be a little bit tricky to find a parking spot or where your parking spot is.
Landing gear deployed.
Oh, now see, I'm going to be interfering with another parking spot, so you want to kind of get out of the way pretty quickly and do not run into another ship. Kind of came in a little low there. Now, I'm off-centered here. Obviously, if I'm moving my right joystick, it's just going to yaw. But if I click in the left joystick, I'll bring in my alternate flight controls. That allows me to strafe with the right stick. And then I can back up with the throttle. And then I can land. I'm now centered. However, before you land, it might be important to go back to standard flight controls by pressing in the left stick. And then lower yourself. That way you do not forget that you are in alternate flight controls. You don't have to do that. You can do it after you take off. But it allows me and helps me to remember that I am in the correct flight controls when I take off. So what about the large space stations, the starports? Well, I chose a different system because, for two reasons. The starport in Ernan is a little close to the planet, and this one is actually around a moon around a ring gas giant, so it's got a little bit more complexity to it. It's also a bit further away. So we're going to go ahead and select that. You can either do it from the system map, or you can do it from the navigation panel. And we're going to head that way. It's 1,853 light seconds away. So here I just go full throttle. As we approach our destination, you keep an eye on that timer underneath the distance. As soon as it hits 10, I'm going to lower it down to the bottom of the blue. And continue my approach, coming up from underneath the planet in relation to its orbit, its orbital plane. Now we use the planet as our first identifier as we're approaching because the moon is too small to see and gas giants have an absolutely enormous gravity well, so it's easy to see from very far out. But also keep in mind that gas giants have an enormous gravity well, and so their gravity will affect your speed from much further out and they'll slow you down even further. Now, see how the planet is not level? Its rings are not level and it's kind of angled from its orbital plane. We can use that to our advantage, but it's not going to give us the idea of where the station is. The station's around a moon, and it's right there. You can see that little ring around the moon that's orbiting the planet. Now, on the left-hand side here, right there in the center of your screen is the station. You can kind of see the mail slot on the left. That's what we're going to try and shoot for. So we're going to orientate ourselves around. The orbit of the station is a near perfect circle around the moon. That's what I like to try and keep it there. And I put that little tick at the bottom of our target right on the moon. And then as we approach, we're going to try and not so much skim the top of the planet, but that's pretty much what we're going to do. And that'll help us line up the mail slot, or the entrance to the station. And when we drop out of Super Cruise, as long as that mail slot is right in front of us on the station, right there, we will end up right in front of the station. Again, over here is your distance and speed. Keep an eye on that, because sometimes it won't always be 1 and 1. Sometimes you'll be dropping out a lot sooner than expected, so definitely keep an eye on that. Definitely check it at least once before you get surprised by where the dropout point is. Let's now save the disengage. And boom, we are right here at the entrance to the station. Once you hit 7.5 kilometers, you can request dock.
Sierra Yankee Lima, please check your speed on approach to this facility. Access granted. Proceed to Bay 36.
As I get closer, about 4.5 kilometers out, I'll lower my landing gear. And make sure you decrease your speed a little bit if you're at full throttle. Otherwise, it takes a really long time for it to slow down. Speed limits outside of stations is typically about 100 meters per second. Sometimes stations don't have a speed limit. Those are usually in anarchy systems, lawless systems.
1,000 meters from touchdown.
But it's a good practice to keep it at 100 meters per second, regardless anyway. Gonna flare it. Oh, almost nailed it. Again, I'm off-centered, so go ahead, hit alternate flight controls, select it back, reverse, and then lower yourself down. And there you are, arrived at the starport. So what do you do if you approach the starport from the wrong direction and you are not facing the mail slot when you arrive? That's fine. I will show you how to navigate around the station so you can find the mail slot, as sometimes it can be pretty tricky. So I'm actually going to arrive right behind it the best I can, pretending that the opposite side of the station is the front. This is a good approach if you're being chased by pirates. You just need to get to the station as quickly as possible, not worrying about whether or not you're going to drop in at this mail slot or not. There's another ship in Super Cruise. Here we are at the back of the station. Once we get close enough...
Delay Sierra Yankee Lima. Starcon conflict established. Reduce your speed as you approach the station, Commander.
Okay.
Mission authorized. Adjust heading for approach to pad 1-2.
We're here at the back of the station. We've requested docking. After you request docking, you see how the station changed to a different color. That is based on your reputation with this system and the controlling faction here. But if you notice, there are arrows on the sides of the station. Those arrows show you where the front of the station is. Now watch yourself. If you get too close, you're going to be within the speed limit range, and if you smack into a ship, then you're going to get fined. So we just follow the arrows to the front of the ship. The other good indicator is look for where other ships are. And then try to look for the advertisements. Here we are. Forget to lower your landing gear. We've made it to the front of the station.
Landing gear deployed.
lateral thrusters to essentially lower myself down so we can line up
Scan
with the
detected.
station. Going in on the green side. The green side is your path that's clear. The red side is for those that are exiting. Don't run into any ships. Line up your approach. Slow down. Alright, so let's go over approaching and landing at a planetary station. Again, this is limited to those who have the Horizons DLC. Maybe one day we'll be able to land on planets like that. But until then, we have rocky planets and ice planets that we can land on. Anything without an atmosphere. There happens to be a ground station here. So let's go ahead. We can zoom in or we can just select it. We look for the station. There it is. Go ahead and select it. Now this is telling me, if you look at this, this is brighter, this is darker, that it's right there on the horizon edge of the star's light. So it kind of gives me a general idea on how to approach it. Also, there are some telltale signs with craters that gives me more identifying features. If, for instance, you're looking for a place that isn't as easily marked as this station. So, let's go ahead, jump the Super Cruise, and head over to Boardage Works.
Four, three, two, one. Engage.
Now the star is over that way, so it kind of gives me an idea on how to approach it, although you're really not going to know exactly where the station is until you get closer. I'm going to go ahead and start slowing down a little earlier here, because we need to try and find out where the station is on the planet from where we are coming from. Is it on the other side? Is it on our side? It all matters on how you approach the planet. Come in too steep, you're going to drop out too early. Come in too shallow, you might overshoot it. So here we are, approaching the planet. There's a lot of ships leaving, which makes seeing the planet a lot more difficult. Remember to keep your throttle at the bottom of the blue. That way you don't overshoot it or smack into the planet too fast. Alright, I can see the light in the dark side of the planet. I can see that the target is starting to go off from the circles, the white circles from the planet. You can use that, the gravity well of the planet, as an identifying feature. Oh, and it just went dotted line, so that means it's on the other side of the planet. The planet is blocking the station. So we're gonna, this is how I do it. Just go around and keep it on my side, and I'm tapping the right stick to the left. There we go. To basically go around the planet. Now keep that tick at the bottom of the circle facing the middle or center of the planet. I've got my vertical lines here. That's like basically the center of your ship. I have that below. Keep it below the station, you'll go down. Keep it above the station, you'll go up. Now I'm a little far away from it, so I'm going to go up a little higher. I don't want to drop down too fast. I'm coming in a little shallow. So it's, what I like to do with mine is keep that number, your altitude number, half of the distance from you are away from the station.
Orbital flight engaged.
Now I'm coming in way too steep. Your speed has to be below 10 kilometers a second before you drop out of orbital cruise. There we go. Got lucky here. I am coming in a bit steep. Usually you kind of want to keep your nose right around 25 to 30 degrees. Here we are. We're approaching in. Now your ship will drop out of glide before it smacks into the planet. Once you get within 7.5 kilometers,
Delay seat Sierra.
you'll be able to request docking.
Federal flight control is in operation at this surface port. Observe docking reservation protocols.
Now,
Request approved. Cleared to land on pad 01.
it is important as you're approaching a planet to keep an eye on the gravity of the planet that is at the very bottom below your altitude. Because if you come in on a high G planet, your ship might not be able to slow down before you smack into the surface. This is below 1G, so it's easy to navigate it. The ship is a bit wobbly. That's not me doing that. That's the ship. Landing gear.
Landing gear deployed.
Alright, now we're coming up to the landing pad.
Continued descent. Approach is good.
I'm slowing down because I want to show you something. Alright, we have our... Alright, here we are. Now, keep an eye on your degrees when you're doing this, because if your nose is pitched down, when you go to lower, you're actually going to back up from the center of the landing pad. If you have your nose pitched up, you're going to move too far forward. Once you have the diagram of the landing pad appear on your HUD, basically level your ship out to 0 and line yourself up with the center of the landing pad. That way when you lower yourself, you're not going to go too far backwards, too far forwards, etc. As you can see, my ship started to go backwards because my nose was pitched down. I did that on purpose. Here's another example of a planetary approach to a station. We're going back to Baker's Prospect, which is the starting location for those people who have horizons. This planet is a little bit higher gravity than the last one. It's actually about 1.24, I believe. So we're gonna come in a little. I'm gonna come in a little shallower this time. Keep an eye on the orange circle target. It's now kind of to the right of the gravity well circles, so that tells me it's going to be on the right side of the planet, as in relation to us. Looks like it's going to be on this side of the planet as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of yaw over this way. There it goes. It now shows up on the other side of the planet, so I'm going to pitch my nose up a little bit higher than the horizon, or the edge of the planetary surface. See if I can trigger it. There it goes. Alright. Go a little bit higher, and now I'm going to try and point my nose right at it. We're going to come in a little shallower this time. I like to keep the target somewhat below. See these moving vertical lines? Kind of tells you where your nose is. I like to keep it slightly below it for now. And like I said, I'd like to keep my altitude half of the distance away from our targets. I try to do my best. It's not going to be perfect, obviously, but I try to keep it roughly half. Right, here we come.
Orbital flight engaged.
Orbital cruise is engaged. Here we go. We're roughly halfway. We're a little bit... Our altitude's a little bit less than that. Here we go. Speed needs to slow down a little bit more, down to 10 kilometers a second. I'm going to now start putting my nose down a little bit further to keep my altitude half of the distance. Speed's going to be good. We lost our vertical lines, but your degrees on your HUD there is going to basically take the place of them. I can keep them above the target just slightly. And boom, we should be good here. Drop in the glide. At this point, it doesn't matter for your altitude and the distance away, because glide's going to take care of your arrival. And there we are. Perfect arrival. We can go ahead and request docking straight out of glide. But remember, this is a higher G planet. Keep that in mind as you're approaching. You don't want to smack into the surface of the planet.
Observe docking reservation protocols.
That'll do damage to your ship. Knock out your shields, cost you money. Potentially killing you if you hit it hard enough. There on our compass shows us where our parking spots are. It's going to be one of those 3. I should have set one on the end. Go ahead and slow down a little bit, give myself more maneuverability. You've got more. Your ship is the most maneuverable when you're in the center of the blue.
Caution is advised.
Lower my landing gear. And line myself up.
Landing gear deployed.
Get a little bit of vertical thrust there. That'll start to come down a little quick. Get myself lined up. Use my alternate flight controls to strafe me over to the left a little bit. And level my nose. Bam. Hit my shield there a little bit, but it's fine. And that's how you approach planetary stations. I hope this video helped you out. Hopefully now you'll be able to approach stations and land on planets much easier. If you have any questions, please put them down in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like button. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber yet. And I will see you in the next video. Fly safe, Commanders.